This is Algebra Lesson 4.2, Real World Graphs. So first we have independent variable and dependent variable. So when you're graphing, your independent variable always goes on your horizontal axis, and usually we label that with an X. Your dependent variable goes on your vertical axis, and usually we label that with a Y. You can use other variables. Sometimes people like to use letters that relate to the situation, like an H and a T for height and time. But X and Y are commonly accepted, and we say that the dependent variable depends on the independent variable. Domain and range are words that relate to the values on those different variables. So the values that the graph covers on the X or the horizontal axis would be the domain, and the values that the function covers on the vertical or the Y would be the range. So let's try to see if we can figure out which variables are independent and which are dependent. We have a situation here that says a person alternates between running and walking. We're going to sketch the situation, and we're going to label the variables. So the variables in this case, in a person alternating between running and walking, would be speed and time. So time would be our horizontal, and speed would be our vertical. So we could use T and S if we wanted to, or just stick with X and Y. Running and walking. Running is going to be fast, and walking is going to be slow. So I would probably go fast, slow, something like that. Letter B says a person gradually speeds up to a constant pace. So we're going to use the same variables. I'll just do T and S this time. And if we're speeding up and then it's constant, that's going to level out. And the last one says a person walks, speeds up to a run, and then slows down to a walk. So we are walking. We're going to speed up to a run and then slow back down to a walk. So something like that. So the point of these graphs is to show where there's an increase or a decrease. We can show different rates by showing how different steepness is in the line. Constants would generally be flat. Letter B says this graph shows the depth of water in a leaky swimming pool. Tell what quantities are varying and how they are related. Give possible real-world events in your explanation. So I see that we start at 2 feet deep. The depth depends on how much time goes by. Time we don't really control. That's our independent variable. Time flows whether we like it or not. But as time moves on, since my swimming pool is leaking, the depth decreases. So I'm going to start with decreases. And I'm going to kind of write this in shorthand. I would like more of a written explanation, but I don't really have a lot of space. But from 0 to 6 hours. So the pool's leaking for the first 6 hours, but then at 6 hours it starts increasing. So there's a couple possible explanations I can think of. Maybe it starts raining, so the pool starts to fill up slowly, or maybe someone puts a hose in there, but adds water. And if it's raining, maybe it's raining from about hour 6 to hour 11. So a good 5 hours of rain. And then, because we didn't actually fix the plug in the pool, it's still leaking. Once the rain stops, then the water level starts decreasing again. So if this is asking for kind of like a story, I might want to write this out a little bit nicer, but you get the idea. So what are the independent and dependent variables? Those are on my axes here. Dependent on the side, independent on the bottom. So my independent variable is time, and my dependent variable is depth. Next, what are the domain and range? The domain would be the values along the horizontal axis. Now, specifically the values that the function covers, or the graph covers, not just all the numbers, but this one, the graph starts at 0 hours and then continues along until we reach 16 hours. So my domain would be 0 to 16. Now, if you've taken a different, more discrete math class, sometimes we represent this a little bit differently. We might use some curvy brackets and say 0 less than or equal to t less than or equal to 16 would be the more technical way to write this. But I'm not going to look at technical. I'm going to look at if you have the concept down. Basically, it goes from 0 to 16. The range then looks like you might be tempted to say 0 to 4 because that's the numbers that I see on the axis. But remember, the domain and range are not just the values you see on the graph. I could technically keep this axis going all the way up to 100 if I wanted to. There'd be a whole bunch of empty space up here, but I can scale my axis however I want to. What I'm really looking at is the values that the graph covers. So the lowest point of this graph is at 1, and the highest point of this graph is at 3. So I'm going to say my range is 1 to 3. And again, if you wanted to get technical, you might say 1 less than or equal to, what is this, depth? Depth less than or equal to 3. But just 1 to 3 is all I'm really looking for. Okay, that is it for our notes. Good luck on the exercises, and please let me know if you have any questions.